Week 3 of the fantasy baseball season, and here's a few hitters I look to buy and trade for this week. So a few of these guys off to slow starts, but as the season goes on, they'll get it going and put up the numbers they usually do. The first guy, Byron Buxton of the Minnesota Twins. So Buxton, throughout his career, the problems have been injuries, but everything else, for the most part, he goes out there and produces, and he puts up numbers. So far in the season, only 2 home runs, 6 RBIs, 10 runs scored, and 58 at-bats, a .224 batting average, and a .292 on base. So we know Byron Buxton, he's a guy, obviously, that he's not going to have a high batting average, but more power I was going to expect from Byron Buxton in the early going, where last season he had 28 home runs in only 340 at-bats, but this season so far only with 2 home runs. And over the last couple weeks here, batting 167, so obviously his average will be low most likely once again this season. But the power just hasn't been in play, or the RBIs for Buxton. April 14th at the Yankees 0 for 3 with a run. April 15th at the Yankees 0 for 4. April 16th at the Yankees 0 for 3. April 18th at the Red Sox 0 for 3 with an RBI. And April 19th at the Red Sox 1 for 4 with 2 runs. So right here, Byron Buxton, he's not doing much for fantasy owners, but as the weather heats up, and he could get things going here, he's definitely a guy that I think could hit 35, 40 home runs if he's healthy the whole season. And right now, while he's struggling and not doing much at all for fantasy owners, it's a perfect time to buy him low. The next guy, Salvador Perez of the Kansas City Royals. So Salvador Perez, he's been one of the best power hitting catchers over the last few seasons. And so far this season, he's off to a very slow start as well. 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, 4 runs scored, a .235 batting average, and a .257 on base. The last season, solid year with 23 homers. And a few seasons ago, he hit over 40 home runs with Salvador Perez. So right now, he's not showing the power. Batting average is down there. And I know you don't have a lot of protection in that lineup in Kansas City, but I think he's a guy that once he could get going, he could carry a fantasy team for weeks on end. And like I said, one of the better catchers in fantasy baseball. April 15th versus the Braves, 2 for 5 a rib. April 16th versus the Braves, 1 for 4 with a run. April 17th versus the Rangers, 0 for 4. April 18th versus the Rangers, 2 for 4. And April 19th versus the Rangers, 1 for 4 with a run. So right now, he's just got to get going in Salvador Perez. The power's got to start coming with only 2 home runs and 68 at-bats. And I think it will. So right now, while he's struggling and not doing much of anything, is Perez for fantasy baseball. It's a perfect time to go buy him this week. The next guy, Juan Soto at the San Diego Padres. So Juan Soto, I don't know what's happened to him over the last year and change here. Even Washington last season, before the trade to San Diego last year at the deadline, he didn't do much. And so far this season, off to a very horrible start is Juan Soto. On the season, 12 runs scored, 4 home runs, 9 RBIs, a stolen base, a 180 batting average, and a .376 on base percentage. So right now, I don't know what's going on with Soto. He's still putting the ball in play. He's not striking out at a high clip. Only 17 strikeouts in 63 at-bats. But for whatever reason, he's getting beat a lot. And he's been making some weak contact this season as Juan Soto. The power numbers, they will come, no doubt about it. But he's usually a 300 hitter throughout his career. Besides last season, only hitting .240, but the on-base percentage is still high. And he's just got to find a way to find the holes and show a little bit more power, is Soto. I don't know if it's the San Diego offense as a whole, which has been a struggle, and it's a trickle effect, because obviously that's what it looks like to me. The Padres, in the last 4 games, they've only scored 2 runs. So the last few games here for Soto, April 15th versus the Brewers, 0 for 2, 3 runs. April 16th versus the Brew Crew, 0 for 3. April 17th versus the Braves, 0 for 3. April 18th versus the Braves, 1 for 2 with an RBI. And April 19th versus the Braves, 2 for 4 with a home run in that one. So right now, he goes to a good hitter's ballpark coming up is Juan Soto at Arizona in the next series here for the San Diego Padre team. But right now, he's just not getting the job done. He's not hitting for average. He's not showing power or driving in runs. And it's definitely a little bit concerning, because last season as well, we saw for the majority of the season with Soto. So right now, while he's down in the doldrums and the batting average under the Mendoza line, this is a perfect time to buy him low, because he's a guy that obviously, once he figures things out and gets things going, he could carry a fantasy team and this Padre team for weeks to months on end. The next guy, Carlos Correa of the Minnesota Twins. So Carlos Correa, what an offseason it was. A lot of uncertainty and a lot of bouncing around. First, he signed a mega deal with the Giants. The physical didn't look good there, fell through. Then the New York Mets signed him. Same type of thing with the ankle. And then he settled on a shorter-term deal with the Minnesota Twins to return. So far this season here for Correa, it's been a mighty struggle. 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, 5 runs scored, 215 batting average, and a 298 on base. So last season, Correa was pretty solid with the 290 batting average, 22 and 64. And right now this season, it just hasn't been a good one at all. But he's a guy, once he gets things going and gets disciplined back at the plate, you know he's one of the better solid hitters in the league. So the last few games here for Correa: April 13th at the Yankees, 2 for 3, a homer in that one, 2 runs scored. April 14th at the Yankees, in that one, 1 home run, 3 RBIs, 2 for 4. April 15th at the Yankees, 0 for 4. April 16th at the Yankees, 0 for 4. April 18th at Boston, 1 for 2 with a rib. And April 19th at Boston, 0 for 5. So last week it looked like he was starting to break out with back-to-back games where home runs, obviously, for the Twins at the New York Yankees. But the last few games here, he hasn't done anything, is Carlos Correa. And he's in a tailspin right now. In his last 15 at-bats, only 1 hit, so he's slumping his Correa. Not driving in runs, not showing power. But this Twin team, they've been putting up some decent runs over the last few games here, with him and Buxton not doing much. So right now, while Correa is struggling, and we know shortstop's still one of the weakest positions in fantasy baseball, he's definitely a perfect buy low candidate this week. And the final hit I looked at buy and trade for this week here is George Springer of the Toronto Blue Jays. So George Springer off to a slow start this season here with this Blue Jay team. He's still showing some pop, but the batting average is way down there, and the on-base percentage isn't good at all. So on the season, 3 home runs, 8 RBIs, 11 runs scored, 3 stolen bases, a 215 batting average, and a 280 on base. So right now, George Springer, we know he's got potential to hit 30, 35 home runs each and every year, and he's usually a 240, 250 hitter at worst. So right now, the batting average is down, but an encouraging sign, only 14 strikeouts in 73 at-bats here for Springer. So he's putting the ball in play a little bit more, but he's just not finding the hole. So the last few games here for Springer: April 15th versus Tampa, 0 for 3, an RBI, stolen base. April 16th versus Tampa, 0 for 3 with a run. April 17th at Houston, 0 for 3. April 18th at Houston, 0 for 4. And April 19th at Houston, 0 for 4. So right now, Springer's in a crazy slump over the last week and a half here, where he's just not hitting the baseball or finding the holes at all here, is Springer. So right now, he's for his last 17, but once he breaks out of his slump, he's a guy as well that could carry fantasy owners for weeks on end. So right now, with the averages down, well, he's not hitting and he's slumping over the last week and a half here, Springer. He's definitely a guy to go out there and get, because going into the weekend, he's got a good matchup at Yankee Stadium, where that's a small ballpark. It's a hitter's ballpark, and that ball really flies when the weather's nice as well. So right here, I think Springer could get back on track this weekend at the Yankees. But right now, while he's not doing much for fantasy owners and he's in a major slump, it's a perfect time to buy him this week and trade for him. So that's a few hitters I look to buy and trade for here in week 3 of the fantasy baseball season.